Pharmaphobic is powered by Achieve the Lifestyle, a company dedicated to helping you empower your health, redefine your lifestyle, and all for the health of it. You're listening to Pharmaphobic, where we challenge the state of health in America. I'm Janie, a physician assistant, and I've seen how healthcare keeps people dependent instead of truly healthy.
And I'm Dan, a veteran turned fitness pro here to uncover the truth and explore simple and sustainable health solutions. From big pharma to big food, we're exposing the conflicts of interest keeping us sick and finding better ways to take back our health.
No fluff, no gimmicks, just real talk, real solutions, and a little bit of fun along the way.
Hey guys, this is Dan.
And Janie.
And we're here with another episode of the Pharmaphobic Podcast, where the goal here, guys, is to help you pursue a stronger, healthier, and more capable version of yourself. And to do that, we want to basically bring awareness to a bunch of topics and a bunch of things that might be working against you in that pursuit.
Yeah. And what are we going to talk about today?
Well, today we are going to talk about the men's health. And before we get going, I want you to know that I'm going to beat you up, okay? I'm going to beat you up, guys. I feel like, obviously we spoke about women in the previous episode, and obviously, that's a very complex issue, and it requires a little bit of a gentler touch. The men, on the other hand, I feel like you need to be grabbed by the shoulders and shaken into compliance, okay? Because you need to put your health first if you actually want to be.
But Dan is doing this from a place where he's done the work to improve himself with a lot of the things that he's going to speak on today, or that we're going to speak on today. And as something that happened on our way here in the car, we were talking about how our relationship started, which will be in a future episode. And he admitted of having very prideful moments. And I was like, I need to document this. I need to have this permanently somewhere where other people can bear witness.
Okay. Now, understanding that pride is one of those things that can work for your health, but it can also affect your health, because then it might make you put things off that you actually need to be doing because you find yourself in a position where you're too proud to admit that you have a problem and that you need help. And I feel like that is the most typical guy thing that I could have ever thought, to be like, nah, I'm good. And that's why we want to kind of talk about this a little bit. So looking out at the healthscape of men, what do you see as like a medical practitioner? What do you think you see out there?
I see a lot of, the thing that comes to mind is, men seeking testosterone replacement without doing the groundwork of.
You went straight for the jugular.
Yeah. But so I've interacted with a few patients who are on testosterone treatment, and they're, consuming alcohol on a regular basis. They're not prioritizing their sleep. They're not doing any exercise, and their diet is trash. And so then I try to counsel them on, you're probably not responding as optimally to testosterone as you could. And they get very defensive about that. And they don't want to hear it. They just want their testosterone because it makes them feel a little bit better. But I'm like, you could feel so much better on it. And we're going to get to that. But that's the thing that I see most, is that men seek, and this is, you can say any gender, but men seek
the easy button
to make them feel more manly without doing, quote unquote, manly, without doing manly things. We'll dig into that. That's a very superficial way to say it, but we'll dig into a little bit more.
Yes, I think with that's we're gonna, as we lay this episode out, I think we're gonna do some physical stuff like what you'd expect to hear from us, but then we're gonna get into some more emotional intelligence type of thing, because I feel like men neglect that very easily, and then it ends up leading to a lot of mental health issues. And I mean, you might drop dead of a freaking heart attack because you never dealt with your emotional baggage. Thinking about that testosterone thing. So when I look at it, there's like a couple things that I see. Obviously, obesity rates, we're at 70% when you combine overweight and morbidly obese category for the population in general.
And you're speaking as to why testosterone is not optimal in men.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
I'm getting that's one of, looking at it like obesity, because these things feed off each other. So obesity rates in the population at large, as men and women, are very high. And then when you look at men, they're very high as well. It's declining testosterone rates. I'm sure by this point, everybody's heard about declining fertility rates in women, declining sperm counts in men, declining testosterone rates. The average 20-year-old today has a lower testosterone rate or lowest testosterone count than a dude in his 60s 30 years ago. I mean, that's pretty bad when you're 20-some years old at the peak of reproductive age, and a dude that could have been your grandfather 40 years ago had better testosterone than you. That's crazy. So there's an environmental factor there. Plus, that kind of correlates with the obesity thing. You see sedentarism through the roof, and then we see a lot of depressed and anxious men that feel very lonely. Those are the areas that I see when I look across at the thing.
And as a result of the depressed and loneliness, more and more people are medicated, which can also influence testosterone rates. And then there is some evidence out there showing the high incidence of oral contraceptives of women affecting testosterone in men through secondary means.
Interesting.
So,
that's something that definitely worth discussing. So,
and I saw this on Instagram. Some young men want testosterone so bad for aesthetic reasons that they're taking Plan B, so women's hormones, to tank their own testosterone so then they can get a prescription for it.
Listen,
anyway,
I really hope.
I guess it's a step up from Tide Pods, but I'm not sure.
Lord Jesus Almighty, I really hope that is a freaking urban myth. I hope
it's just clickbait that I fell for.
Clickbait.
But
I hope it's an urban myth, because if I hear of some dude out there taking Plan B to drop his testosterone that's already low so that he can get on TRT, oh my boy, I'm gonna have to choke you out. That's crazy. That is wild. Literally, testosterone's the life force, and you're over here tanking it so you can get on the fake stuff when you can kind of maximize your levels, see where you land, and then maybe you get on the testosterone replacement and feel really good versus just feeling kind of okay or feeling better because you're on the testosterone replacement at 28. What are we even doing? What are we doing here, guys? So this is why this conversation is very necessary. So taking it apart little by little, I think starting with that hormonal health thing, because we need to kind of explain what testosterone does for men, because a lot of people hear testosterone and then they start thinking of dudes with big beards and over muscled and kind of, aggressive behavior, which is not what testosterone's meant to do for you necessarily. Those are usually people that might be on steroids or super physiological levels of testosterone, meaning that they went above the levels that are kind of naturally produced by an optimal endocrine system. Right. Now, what do you think? What do you think about it? Because I feel like testosterone catches, when you talk testosterone levels, hey, we need to raise your T, it catches a little bit of a bad rap. And people think about steroid users instead of thinking about a normal dude.
Right. Well, I mean, I do have a little bit of a, bias when it comes to it, because, men can go into a doctor's office and, say oh, I can't get it up, or I'm tired all the time. And they're much more likely to get their testosterone checked or to receive a prescription for Viagra or to receive a prescription for testosterone than if a woman goes into a doctor and is oh, I'm tired, I have no sex drive. Oh, you're anxious, you're depressed. Maybe do some self-care, or here's Prozac, right? And so just given that, men already have a little bit of a leg up in getting some of these things solved, and there's way more studies in this, okay? But most of the time I see men, they're struggling to feel their optimal selves, and they, think it's their testosterone, but they aren't thinking of what they're doing to optimize their own natural testosterone.
Agreed. And they're not thinking about stuff that might be tanking their testosterone. Some of them you won't necessarily be aware of, and that's where like the environmental toxins come into play. But
I think, and this could be its own episode, but I think the biggest environmental thing that affects testosterone that men, I think, look at as a rite of passage for them or something that they have to do is alcohol use.
Oof. No doubt alcohol use will tank your testosterone quicker than anything else. I mean, I would say alcohol tanks testosterone more than sleep deprivation.
Well, I mean, it's going to cause sleep
And it's going to cause sleep deprivation, yes. So alcohol use and high levels of belly fat, which they tend to go hand in hand or are very common, very prevalent amongst the male population. And you mentioned erectile dysfunction, which obviously that's usually where it starts for men when they experience erectile dysfunction. That's where they start getting worried because obviously as men, you want to have sex and you tie a lot of your worth to how much sex you're having. Is that right or wrong? I mean, we can discuss.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but then it's all related, right? Because erectile dysfunction is a vascular issue likely caused by mitochondrial dysfunction, a metabolic dysfunction.
And it can also be a stress thing. Your mind,
or it's your mind
right.
too, right? Yeah. And so all of this stuff, like you can't just say, oh, diet affects your testosterone or alcohol affects. I mean, it's all related.
Yep.
Because if you go out and drink alcohol, you're more likely, you go get drunk with your buddies, you're more likely to eat crap bar food, and then your sleep sucks, and then your mood's down the next. So it's all kind of related.
Yeah. Yes. And that alcohol thing, that's heavy an issue with testosterone for sure. And if you're taking TRT and still drinking, you're kind of working against yourself for sure.
And then other endocrine disruptors that I don't think are widely known because everyone, we probably said alcohol and some people like rolled their eyes like, oh, this shit again,
Yep.
But other things that disrupt in the endocrine system and could affect your hormone production are like heavily scented.
Like perfumes, like fake smells,
candles, fake smells, air fresheners, plastics, like, cooking utensils or pans, like a bunch of things that we could go down rabbit holes about. But that's more like second tier, I think. First tier is,
Yes. So first tier for sure, it's very nutrition driven. Yep. So alcohol use, eating very trash food, driven. Very common. Yeah, lifestyle for sure. Yeah. Lack of stress management, and then, body composition. If your body, you're lacking muscle and you're carrying high levels of body fat, that's going to affect your testosterone production for sure. Right. And even if you go on the TRT, if you have high levels of body fat, then you go into this process of aromatization. I had to get that word out, where your body starts turning that T into estrogen.
And then you have to be on an estrogen blocker.
And then you have to be on an estrogen. Yeah. So now, before we carry on, like the levels, guys go get their testosterone tested after they hear this. They'll be like, oh, doctor said I'm normal. He said I'm normal. So
there's a difference between normal, conventional, and optimal. Yeah. You want to be optimal, right? Especially if you're doing the work. Now, if you're sitting on your ass eating Cheetos, sure, you can be normal.
Yeah. And understand when they say normal, those averages change year over year because they base it on what they see over the span of a year. So 10 years ago, normal, the number for normal might have been very different than what they're going to tell you today.
And you also have to realize the levels of normal are when they did the surveying for testosterone ranges, who did they likely have access to?
That too.
People in the hospital who were sick, they could just draw blood from if they agreed to be part of this study. So those levels are not likely, and maybe it's changed. This is when I looked into it years ago, but they're not of men out there, like lumberjacks or, firefighter, stuff like that, like doing stuff.
That keep a good body composition, that sort of thing.
People laying in bed in a non-healthful state. And so you also have to look at what are the normal ranges referenced from, okay? And then, like we mentioned, testosterone naturally is declining per age groups. And so now that normal range is coming less and less and less. So now for you to fit normal is a lower threshold, meaning that you can feel like crap and be normal.
Yep.
And us women have been dealing with that for years. So welcome to the party. But
Yeah.
it just shows that we need to look at optimal levels. We need to look at where you feel great and expand on that.
So first of all, when you go get blood tests and you test your test, you see what I did there? So you're gonna you're gonna see this number range between 300 and 1200. Okay, that anything that falls in between that is what they'll call normal. Now think about that range that I just gave you. 300.
Yeah, you could be 303
to exactly, and they'll call you normal. 300 to 1200. That's huge. It's the same thing with vitamin D. What did it say? 30 to 90 is normal.
30 to 80.
That's crazy. Like tighten that shot group up, baby. Those numbers are too big. Those numbers are too big. So obviously, if you're closer to 300, here's the thing: you're not going to be running optimally for the most part.
Right.
So you want to bump that up, and get closer to that 1200. Now, if you're above 1200, that's what they would call super physiological. Now you're in bodybuilder territory, like juiced up territory, which is not good either. Now, what happens to men as you start dropping lower and lower and lower? Because testosterone plays a role in the body more so than just giving you muscles and a nice beard like this one I got going on right here. I'm working on it, guys. Okay? We're talking about blood sugar regulation. That really surprised me. I was reading about a study where they gave men testosterone and it helped them regulate blood sugar levels. That's a good thing, right? Mm-hmm. Now, obviously, there's other ways to regulate blood sugar than going on testosterone. Now we're talking about movement and what the hell you're eating. But it plays a role. Sleep. If your sleep is really crappy, the lower your testosterone levels drop, the crappier your sleep gets. So it helps men sleep. Things like drive and ambition, like you feel like you have no quote unquote motivation to do stuff, testosterone levels could be low. That's a symptom of it. Okay, so these are things that go past what you can see that help you regulate yourself as a man. Okay, how you perform at work, all that stuff, it has to do with testosterone.
Yeah. And I always found this challenging when working with people who, have concerns for low testosterone and do want treatment for it, because there's, I'm not physically active. I'm not sleeping well. And so my testosterone's low. But if you give me testosterone supplementation, I will then exercise and, sleep better and my body composition will improve. Or do you need to be doing that stuff before you can even get on testosterone? So, because like you said, some people have low testosterone. So then they're like, they don't have the motivation. Mm-hmm. They don't have the drive. They're not making good choice.
Yeah, it becomes a chicken or the egg thing.
Exactly. And so I see it as it's very individualized, and you could say it's the same thing like with the GLPs. Like if you're not willing to put in the effort to optimize your own testosterone supply and your ability to respond to exogenous testosterone, then you are doing it wrong.
Yeah, I think a lot, and 9 out of 10, they'll go on maybe not 9 out of 10, more like 8, 7 out of 10, observationally speaking, you get a lot of dudes that go on the juice and then they think they solved all their problems. And that goes back to this, big pharma help me type of mentality, even though testosterone might not be considered a big pharma product. It's an exogenous thing that you can rely on, and you can overprescribe, quite honestly. If you're not walking the walk on what you need to do to be optimal as a man, that's a problem. Yep. You're like, I got the testosterone, I'm good. Like your mood improves and that sort of thing. I'm sleeping a little better, I'm good. My pee-pee's going up when I say it needs to go up, I'm good. So it's... You
can say penis.
I don't know why that was the first word that came to my head. I have no idea. I have no idea why that was the first word that came to my head. Your penis, gentlemen, your penis. When you want it to go up, it goes up. You're good to go. I'm good. So maybe a little. You could see a little tricep coming in. You're like, I'm good, guys. Keep giving me the juice. I'm good. But it's like, nah, bro. That's That's step one.
Yeah.
You need to like do all these other things to really optimize.
Yeah.
And there's more to your health than just having quote unquote optimal testosterone levels.
I also want to just hit on nutritional, because the more I've looked into testosterone, like 5 years ago, I didn't realize zinc played such a huge role, right? And these other micronutrients that play big roles in optimal testosterone. And if you're not eating a nutrient diverse diet or a whole food diet, and you're relying heavily on ultra processed foods, and you're depleted of these things, that can also contribute to suboptimal levels of testosterone in addition to all the other stuff that we mentioned. And so that's why it's our company, Achieve the Lifestyle, is so passionate about people having an optimal lifestyle because of this reason. It helps with so much, and the side effects of stuff like doing resistance training and regular movement are healthier levels of testosterone, healthier blood sugar. I mean, the side effects of a healthy lifestyle are better health. Whereas like if you did rely purely on medications to improve things, then you have like, gas, reflux, like, neuropathy, other side effects, diarrhea, all these things. Whereas we just focus on lifestyle, so many things can improve.
It goes back to that Huberman quote. A better living through chemistry still requires better living. Any way you look at it, even if you don't, I'm going to put the TRT in sort of a proxy, the pharma, because when you just say, I'm going to take this and I'm not going to do anything else, then you're going into the daddy pharma save me mentality.
Yeah.
Even though TRT is not necessarily a big pharma product, and it's super helpful, way more helpful than a bunch of the stuff that big pharma throws out there. I'm just going to put that out there. Yeah. But anyway.
So I think we've spoken on things that are kind of obvious that can deplete testosterone, but what is something, I can think of something that's maybe they're like, but I'm doing this. Why? Like, is my testosterone low? And you knew somebody, who had this, who was doing this.
Okay. Yeah. So I know what you're getting at. Yeah. So let's set the environment here. Why do what things that men tend to do that set them up for failure in the department of long-term health? Okay. So, and allow me to gather my thoughts here. They're behaviors that put you in a position where you think you're working towards health and you're not. Mm-hmm. Now, men are going to be more stubborn. They're going to, I said it, guys, I'm sorry. We got to admit it. When it comes to things like health, you tend to wave the hand. I'm good. That whole thing. Nah, it's not that bad. Mm-hmm. We're more likely to wave the hand, whereas women are more likely to pay attention and take it a little bit more seriously. You tend to want to figure things out yourself, even though you have no freaking clue. This is where you get the guys at the gym that think they know what they're doing, and really what they're doing is messing themselves up. And it's
always men curling in the squat rack. Never a woman. It's always a man.
Guys, hey, pause the show right here. I'm calling technical foul on the play. You are ejected from the game, guys, if you're curling in the squat rack, okay? Not only that, on the way out, I need your man card. It's revoked. Don't curl in the freaking squat rack. You squat in the squat rack, okay? But anyway, that's something that you see a lot, because the guys are like, think they know what they're doing, and then they end up doing stuff that's actually hurting them, or they end up focusing on the wrong thing. So talking about how what you're getting at is overtraining.
Yep. Guys
are like, I need to do this crazy workout, this Navy SEAL workout 1,000 every day because I want to be tough, And I think that's good behavior, that you want to challenge yourself, because as we're going to talk later on, that is necessary for actual men's health, part of that mental health strategy. So you need to challenge yourself, but you got to be smart, brother. And you got to admit what you don't know. And you got to look for the resources. You got to be more willing to look for resources that can help you stay on the right path. Okay. Yeah. So overestimating what you can do, overestimating physical capability and underestimating the effect that it's going to have on you when you exceed your physical capability is such a common thing. And what ends up happening, dudes are doing these crazy workouts, these super ultra long endurance-based workouts that, hey,
High rocks.
yeah, a lot of CrossFit, high rocks, CrossFit, triathlete training. I'm not saying don't do this.
But
I'm
do it in a way that you're able to recover and support your body with nourishment appropriately.
Yes. If you are in a position where you're pretty stressed out, you got young kids, you're starting a business and you're working long hours, whatever it may be, you're going through it in life. When you got the stress cup is almost filled up with other stuff. When you inject the exercise, you got to make sure that you don't make your cup overflow. Now, then you start doing, you're coming off the couch and you want to do the Navy SEAL 5,000 workout. It's not for you. It's not for you at this moment in time.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
And we're talking about non-professional athlete people.
Yes.
Right? Because you just said triathlons and, I've interacted with some professional triathletes. And when you become a professional athlete, the whole risk versus benefit skews towards accepting more risk and accepting more health risk and bad side effects because you're getting paid.
Okay. High performance guys, because guys are the type that'll be like, man, I want to look like, I don't know, Saquon Barkley. So you download Saquon Barkley's workout. Current, I don't know if he's a running back or receiver for the Eagles, Super Bowl champ, whatever. Guys, I want to look like that, so I'm going to download this workout, and that's what I'm going to do. And you're coming off the couch, my guy.
Yeah.
And Saquon's been training for freaking however many years nonstop. So you need to understand that you need to meet yourself where you're at.
Yeah.
And it's hard because you're overestimating what you're capable of. Usually men are filtering. They see themselves as they were. Oh, well, 20 years ago, I just used to do this. So I'm going to go back to what I was doing 20 years ago. It's like, brother, you haven't even seen a weight in 20 years.
I can't tell you how many times that when I would see men for an annual exam and I would say, what do you do for physical activity? Oh, I used to play football. I'm like,
and they're telling you this at 44?
Yeah. I'm like, okay.
Uncle Rico, baby.
But what do you do now
Yeah.
for physical? Like, I'm great that you used to be able to like squat however much and you were, a state champ in like a 4A school district, but what are you doing now?
Yeah.
So.
And they want to pick it back up where they left it off. They want to be like, I used to squat 400. I haven't squatted in 25 years, but I'm going to go back to the gym and I'm going to try to slide 400 on the barbell and get busy.
Yeah. Or else you get the other side of the spectrum because they cannot do what they used to do. They're just like, screw it all. I'm not going to work out.
You're right. That happens too.
Yep.
So there's this mentality that kind of works against you where you overestimate your capability and underestimate what that overestimation is gonna do to you. Yeah. Okay. And that's how injury happens. That's how guys end up giving up. Because it's like, oh, I started doing this thing that I used to do 25 years ago and now my knee hurts. So I'm going to stop. And then you never get back on the wagon again.
Right.
With that in mind, what we were saying about the endurance-based stuff, that has an effect on your testosterone level.
Right.
When you're not recovering from exercise, you're doing too much. I'm going to the gym 6 days a week, doing something 7 days a week. You're really tanking your testosterone. You might look great. It happens. You look great in the process, but you're really...
Yeah.
You're withering away.
Yeah. I think a lot of people don't realize that, hormones in our body are a luxury, right? Yeah. Because we don't need our hormones to survive. I mean, I'm talking about, furthering the species. Yes, you need them. Okay. But I'm talking about just for your body to survive. If your testosterone 0, you can still live. Mm-hmm. Right. And so when you start to treat your body in a way where it's not able to recover, you're not giving it the necessary nourishment, you're not sleeping, it feels very unsafe, it's going to go into survival mode. And testosterone isn't going to be something worth maintaining. Okay. And so that your body, inside your body, doesn't know that you're doing an endurance sport or over exercising for potential benefit. It sees it as like, oh my God, what are we doing?
Yeah.
We need to... all hands on deck, keep things running, screw testosterone. We have to worry about digestion or moving blood around or breathing, And so you need to take care of yourself and able to optimally function your whole body. And testosterone's like the top, any hormone, and this is for women too. Our hormones are like, if everything's running great, then our hormones are functioning optimally. If things aren't running great, hormones are going to be the first kind of warning signal like, uh-oh, something's wrong.
Yeah. And I think with men, it takes a little bit longer to know that something's wrong because, you're built for battle. That's that really, you're built to be out there.
I was just telling Janine this last week, and I kind of break this down for women because they're like, couples sometimes are on weight loss journeys together. Sorry, this is a little tangent. But, they'll both start a diet and a guy can just be like, I switched to Diet Pepsi and I dropped 30 pounds.
Yep, that's true.
And the woman's like, I breathed and gained 5. And so
it is more complicated for women.
The reason is from an evolutionarily viewpoint, when women, in order for the survival of this species, we need to be pregnant for 9 months. We need to carry a child for 9 months. We need to give birth. And then it's not like, any other animal where then the offspring can just like run around. We have to care for that child, keep it alive, breastfeed it, all these things. So that's a good 1.5 years, potentially 2 years. Been told that the child is somewhat self-sufficient. This is a very, very crude way. I'm not trying to say you're going to like parentalize a 2-year-old or anything like that. But men, they ejaculate, then they can leave. We don't need them, from just a very crude standpoint. And so they can get away with doing more reckless things and their body's not going to go into conservation mode as quickly as with women, but it'll still happen.
Yeah, I think we run a lot. We can handle more stress before you can redline a man a little bit more before you realize that something's wrong. And then we tend to write stuff off as like, oh, you're just being soft. Keep going. So that takes you out a little bit longer. And then next thing you know, all the wheels fell off the Hyundai, really. But I mean, if we keep it real, like we're built for battle and doing these crazy things and hunting and we can take a little bit more of a beating, whereas women are very fine-tuned. So it's kind of like it's a F1 car. Before you take it on the track, you got to do a bunch of stuff with the women. Men, we just turn that Corolla on and we got kick the tires and just get going, baby, and never stop. You know what I mean? So it's two different things. But when the wheels come off, they come off hard. It's just you're next thing you know, all 4 of them fell off and you're on the side of the road like, what happened? You had a heart attack, whatever it is. So that's why we got to realize what behaviors are working against you. With the training stuff, a lot of the endurance bias stuff, as you age, it really starts working against you. Like I've discovered, I'm 40, I'm going to be 42 this year. Volume, there's an inverse correlation. Volume destroys me. Intensity, meaning lifting heavy, challenging myself with the weights in reasonable rep schemes and reasonable amounts, doesn't. I recover from that fairly well. But whenever I go volume and ask Janie, I am sore for days on end.
You don't think it has anything to do with the fact that you like continually sandbag volume workouts?
Nah. It really, I mean, because I don't need to do deload weeks. Like I can go heavy every time and I'm good. I'm not sore.
Oh, I would say that the fact that you don't have to do deload weeks says something.
What do you mean?
The fact that you don't need to take a rest means that maybe you're not pushing it as you need to.
Nah, girl, I'm lifting these weights.
Okay.
I'm lifting these weights. You see, I'm being stubborn. But no, think about that. As I grow older, like volume workouts, I actually only lift 3 days a week.
And I will say that you are doing very well with your workouts. And if it's not broke, don't fix it, right? But I am saying that rest is important. And if you're just doing like the bare minimum and you never need a rest, then maybe you do need to challenge yourself a little bit more. I'm just
now the thing is clear. With that in mind, without getting too technical, and we'll discuss training in more detail in later episodes, but without getting too technical, you want to challenge yourself in your workouts, but how you challenge yourself matters. That doesn't mean like my weight, I'm trying to PR whenever I lift. If it's like, hey, I'm going to add 5 pounds to what I did last time. And every week I tend to be going up. And for the amount of time that I've been training, I mean, which is 20 plus years nonstop, the the little trajectory I'm on, it says that I'm doing something right because I only lift 3 days a week. I train jujitsu, where are we, 3 to 4, depending on the weeks. But there's a balance there. And some days I just do like a little zone 2 light cardio. So the volume of my workouts is very low. Now the intensity of them, I'm trying to go very heavy. So that's where the challenge is. But the notion of volume, as I found as I get older,
Right.
it wrecks me. I'm trying to do a set of 20 or something. I'm done. I'm going to be cooked.
Right.
You see what I mean? And then, my sleep gets compromised and all this stuff. So, or I'm going to try to lift more than my 3 days, wrecked.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So that's something that you need to account for in your training. The other thing that men mess up, you get these guys that the volume hounds, they want to do all the quote unquote challenges, that they're not ready for coming off the couch. They want to go 0 to 100. The other thing that you get is these guys that fall in love with aesthetics.
Yes.
And they don't even there's nothing more frustrating to me than to talk to a guy that needs to work out. And he's telling me, I just care about how I look. I don't care about, I just care about how I look. So they want to do these super focused bodybuilding type workouts that, grow this little muscle right here, boom, boom, boom. And that's all they're doing. And really, you're kind of just sandbagging, sitting on machines at the gym and talking or getting on your cell phone in between sets. And that doesn't serve you either. I mean, I'm glad you're working out and lifting some weights, but that doesn't serve you either. There has to be some sort of focus on performance and capability building.
Yeah.
And just focusing on the way you look tends to set you up for failure as well.
Right.
Capability is super important, and we'll get into that as a dude. Hey, what can I do today that I couldn't do yesterday? Building on that. And outside of, in this little machine, I used to do 10 pounds, now I can do 15. Outside of that, if you're not focusing on things like, am I more mobile? Am I out of pain? Is my body functioning better? Can I do these little work tasks? Carry all the groceries in on one trip, that sort of thing.
If you're a father, can you keep up with your kids as they progress within their athleticism?
Can I go on hikes? All these sort of things are going to play a role more so than just sitting there and looking great.
Yeah.
All muscular, hopped up on Mountain Dew type thing.
Are we ready to go into the mental aspect of it? Because I have a segue between these two things if we are.
No, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
So one thing I see, and you've trained a lot of teens, but I see it with, in family medicine, is that we spoke last week about how women will care for their kids. You see them, but it's both parents really. They take their kids to their sports practices and, they watch them, but they're doing nothing. Okay. Now I see this more with men where we will get into their kids' sport, right? And almost like they're living through their kid.
Oh, yeah.
And putting so much pressure on their kid to be best when dad's overweight, can't touch his toes, hasn't lifted a weight in forever. So, but it's just channeling all that energy into your kid. And so I think you have a little bit more close up of that than I have.
Yes, I see it a lot.
Yes.
Because I work with athletes, like youth athletes, youth sports. I see that a lot. Where you see a lot of pressure from a dad to achieve in sport and do this, and why are you not disciplined, and blah, 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 blah. When I'm looking at dad, and dad looks like the last time he did a workout was in 1975. I've had conversations with dads that tell me they want their kids to lose weight while they're eating their freaking potato chips and it's going down their shirt. I'm not even exaggerating. That happened.
Yeah.
I need my kid to lose weight, and dad's like at least 30 pounds overweight, chomping on potato chips, telling me between bites that he wants the kid to lose weight. So, and we're not setting an example. You're not taking care of yourself, bro. So how are we, why do you think, and this goes back to that overestimation of physical capability, why do you think that you're in a position to tell this kid or ask of somebody something that you're not doing yourself? Or at least you haven't done for years and years and years.
Right.
Because the kid that you're putting pressure on, he doesn't know that you used to be state champ, bro, and you could throw the football over the mountain like Uncle Rico.
Okay.
He doesn't know that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's something, that's a problem. where you're relying on who you used to be.
Right. And so that's where I think they're trying to fill a void, whether it's mentally or emotionally.
Yep.
And instead of taking ownership of that and finding ways, whether it's through, working out or hobbies or things like that, then they funnel it into their kids.
I think, and with that, before we go, like there's some environmentals here, because why is men's health so important? Why is it important that men are in alignment with nature and that they're in a better place? I think we create societal problems more than the women. Okay. What do I mean by that? If you look at the current numbers of eligibility for military service between 17 and 24-year-olds, okay, these are young people, 17 to 24-year-olds. The estimate, what the DOD is estimating, the Department of Defense, is that 80% of that population is ineligible for military service. Okay, they couldn't go to basic training where you don't even have to be in shape to show up. They're so out of shape that they can't go the basic. They can't even take them. Why? Drug use, mental health issues, and complete and utter lack of anything that looks like physical capability. That's a problem. Yeah. If there's no men to serve in the military, what does that do? I mean, what do we just, nation does, we need people in the military. If you can't serve in the military, that means that police and firefighters are probably going to be sucking for recruitment too. Yep. That's a problem. I mean, you think we need police officers and firefighters, right? For society to function as we know it. Men that are not in alignment with themselves, they tend to, criminals, like a lot of crime is committed by men. That goes up. Suicide rates are extremely high, depending on the demographic, but it's mostly men committing suicide. And all of that stuff ties back to these health initiatives. It ties back to physical health, it ties back to nutrition, and it ties back to working on your mental health. And all of those three things are related. They're symbiotic. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. And segueing into the mental health aspect of this for men.
I think men are less likely to admit that they are suffering, either clinical depression or that they have some symptoms, because you can have symptoms of depression and not be like officially depressed. They're less likely to seek help if they're grieving, if they feel stressed. And there's so many times, like, because I always ask anybody, I don't care if male or female, do you feel you're able to cope with stress? What are your stress outlets? Are there any problems with stress in your life? And they're just like, no, it's fine. Like, I don't need help. And I'm like,
so that, okay. And that ties to the first mistake that men make in the mental health scape. And it's, lack of emotional intelligence. This is, it requires a lot of work, and I can definitely attest to that firsthand. But like engaging in conversations, in uncomfortable conversations, and then learning to accept and deal with and cope with a range of emotions versus the one or the other. Like me a couple of years ago, I used to be hot or cold in a sense where I was either really happy or I was really angry. And there was nothing else in between. And if I tended to operate to get things done out of anger. So if I needed to let's say in jujitsu, I'm like, I get angry, boom. That's how I perform. At work, get angry, boom. That's how I perform. It worked for a little bit and then it stopped working. So, and that's not healthy. Right. Where you're not acknowledging all these other emotions, and if you feel low or you're starting to feel anxiety and depression, not acknowledging and sitting with that and learning to deal with that is not healthy. And I put myself in a situation, like thinking about my military days where soldiers would come to me because I was in leadership, be like, oh, this soldier, I'm anxious. I need, they need this medication, whatever. And we're discussing these things as we're assessing risk factors in the unit. And I was the guy that was like, yo, I wouldn't tell them to their face. But then when they walk out, I'd be talking with my deputy or with the first sergeant and be like, anxious. What the hell? This dude's being soft as hell. Get out of my face. Like, what is that? Until a couple of years later, then I was like, man, I can't breathe. I feel like I can't breathe. And then I was like, oh, that's anxiety, bro. You're like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that the hard way.
Yeah.
And men are more likely to be dismissive of that sort of stuff. Crying, sadness, admitting that you're sad, that's a problem. And then engaging in connecting, like actually connecting with other people, that tends to be a problem. And connecting like in deep ways where you're acknowledging emotions and like discussing serious things without getting heightened or whatever, or trying to brush something off. So emotional intelligence is we tend to have a lower EQ factor for sure.
Yeah. I think that goes into a lot of the upbringing. Like I do recognize it has to be hard coming up as a young man where it's like, don't cry, but also if you're an asshole, and also toxic masculinity. Ooh. And also, be in touch with your feelings, but don't be soft. So it's like. Yeah,
we're definitely getting the social construct is yanking us in a bunch of directions because we went from the men never cry type of thing to toxic masculinity if you like to lift weights and eat steak and hang out with the boys.
Yeah,
and that's a problem. It's like, can we not do things in the middle?
Yeah.
Can we have we lost that ability to actually not take things too far in one direction or the other? I mean, come on, guys. Like there's a balance here. A lot of those things that we're starting to call toxic masculinity, as we're going to get into, are by nature required of you as a man. Being a protector, some leadership roles, those sort of things, that's what you're built to do. And if you didn't neglect that, you're not going to feel like you're right. But in the other hand, there's this thing where you could take that too far and be like, I'm stoic all the time. I never acknowledge emotions. And now you have a problem with your wife. You can't even get married because you can't connect with a significant other. And you have no friends because you don't connect with people on a deeper level. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And thinking about that, and I'm sure everybody's heard of the loneliness epidemic. Mm-hmm. And it really weighs heavy on men. Where up to 50% of adults say that they report feeling lonely. And it is even more so in men these days. And then we did not help ourselves over the past couple of years with the event that I'm not going to mention, but you know what I'm talking about.
Voldemort.
Yeah, we exactly. It's Voldemort. We locked ourselves in our houses and stopped connecting with people in real life for a couple of years. Whatever your opinion on that, it messed us up. It works against us.
The health effects of loneliness are real. I think they're pretty comparable to smoking. The health risks of it. And I see, so in my recent job, I was doing a lot of Medicare wellness visits. So I was talking to people over the age of 65. And a lot of them, especially when you get into the late 70s and the 80s, just by nature, friendships go down because a lot of their friends die, mm-hmm. right? And the loneliness is huge. And it is something that is not easy to address. You can't give a pill for loneliness. Yep. Not that, we obviously don't advocate for that, but I'm just saying that it's something that needs to be addressed. And living in like assisted living facilities or independent communities is a great way to have a community around you, but it's also giving up some of your independence, and it's hard.
Yeah, if you look at what they report out of the blue zones, a lot of the magic sauce, not only are these people eating a certain way and they report higher levels of physical activity throughout their lives, but they also are very tribal.
Yes.
Like they have these routines where they hang out with people and talk and do things, and they're very socialized. And that helps, that plays a part. Loneliness is a risk factor for early death, for depression, anxiety, it is. And it doesn't help when we're not working on our emotional intelligence to be able to connect with people on a deeper level. And it certainly doesn't help when we mistake activity for achievement in other ways to connect. Now, what am I talking about here? What's the number one thing that men think they get to do with their quote unquote buddies, and that's how you connect. That's my boy right there. What do you think it is? Drinking. Going out to drink, and I'm gonna go watch football and drink with the guys. And that's how we're connecting. And listen, I'm not saying that can't be part of this, but your drinking buddy might not be the guy, he's faithful in that he shows up to drink with you to watch some freaking football game on Sunday, and you think that you have a ride or die there, but he might not be the guy that comes bail you out of jail if you end up there. He might not be the guy that you call at 3 a.m. and be like, bro, I'm in a bind. And he's like, I got you, and comes running. You know what I mean? So we gotta, it's very important to me. We have to better assess how we connect with people. Listen, men need like ride or dies. Everybody needs ride or die friends, but guys, you really, really need ride or die friends. Like relationships that you foster over years and years and years. And I'm fortunate. I've moved all over the freaking country. This is Florida, my 8th state that I've lived in. And I remember when we were up in New York, Janie telling me like, I'm kind of worried about you because you don't have friends here. You're not really connecting with people like that. And I was like, I don't feel like I need it. Why? Because the people that I talk to daily are friends that I've had since high school. I'm fortunate that we're going on, 25 plus years of nonstop friendship. How do you think that bond is over the years? Janie's gotten to see us hang out. And I grew up with these dudes and we went to college together, and then we stayed in touch over the years, and we talk every day over video chat or whatever. I got another friend that I've known since kindergarten. These are the type of people that you get in a bind, and it's happened. I put it to the test. And when he listens to this, he'll know what I'm talking about, where I called at 3 a.m. and he picked up and he saved me. You know what I mean? It's tested. Boom, done. So men, you need this. This is part of your health. Like having good, solid connections outside of superficial BS, like I'm going out drinking with these dudes, that needs to happen. Mm-hmm. Quality over quantity. You don't need 25 friends like that. You might need 2 or 3, maybe even just 1. But that you can bounce things off, that you can talk, go deep in things that are bothering you, that you're feeling, that you want to do, and that the person challenges you back. Like, bro, you're looking kind of soft, or bro, that's not the behavior that you need to be putting out right now. That is absolutely necessary to your health. You need that like you need to lift weights. Mm-hmm. Period. Yeah. The end. Yeah. Beyond that, I think that there are certain things that men also need, like hobbies, like really good hobbies. And, women, listen, this applies to you too, but we're talking to men today, and I think this is very important because I don't think when you look at it, society right now, these are the things that a lot of guys are missing. And that's why depression and anxiety are so high. Not the only reason, but part of the problem. That part of what's creating problems, and why guys are sitting on couches, eating Cheetos and commenting on Instagram, BS, and just whatever. Skill-based hobbies are probably one of the most important things that you can do as a dude. And what am I calling a skill-based hobby? Like my choice was jujitsu. It's something that you have to learn and you have to study and you have to dissect, that works your mind and maybe even your physical. And it's not something that you can just pick up and know. You have to work at it, and that you are okay with sucking at for a while. And I put this like guys that don't have any hobbies, men that only work, just work. That's it. And listen, there are guys out there that they build businesses and they love that. And so they get immersed in that. And I'll get to that in a second. But guys that have no hobbies, I just work and I go home and I sit on my butt playing video games and then I do it all over again. That's long term. That doesn't lead to you feeling great about yourself. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. What do you think?
You wouldn't consider like playing video games a hobby? The only reason why I'm asking, I've never been a big video game person. But I will dominate at the original Mario if you want to test me. But I just know a lot of men, like the game, that is their hobby. and it's leveled up so much more than just blowing on the cartridge. Okay. It's like there's chairs, there's specific mouse, there's headsets, you can talk with people. And
So let's look at what video games are doing to men. You have guys out there that will play 12 hours straight. They'll call out of work to play. Obviously, everything in moderation, right?
Right.
And so I'm going to talk about the extreme. They'll call out of work to play a certain game because it dropped, whatever, Call of Duty, I don't know, whatever they play these days. There are guys that'll wear diapers to keep playing and not have to stop playing. Does that sound healthy?
No.
You're sitting on your butt, getting blue light bombed for hours on end. Does that sound healthy?
Nope.
Okay. So I'm not saying don't play video games, guys. I'm just saying that if you want to be optimal and we're looking for higher order health things, video games, in my opinion, they take away more than they give you. Mm-hmm. Now, you can argue about, finite motor skills, coordination in the fingers, puzzle solving in certain games, that sort of thing, that can be intellectually stimulating. We can add that as benefits. Yep. But when I put the totality of a man out there and I look at your physical, I look at your mental, I look at your emotional, I think that they take away more than they give.
That's well said.
I'm not, I know that a lot of guys play video games. I played a little bit of video games. I never really got into it. Like I would see a game that I liked, played it for a little bit, and then I was done with it, and then I wouldn't play video games for a long time. So I've never became a gamer. Right. Now, for a lot of men, let's say you go to the gym, you have another hobby, you do, and then you play video games on the weekends or for a little bit every day. That's fine. That's perfectly fine because you're balanced. But most men are not there.
What are some other examples of skill-based hobbies besides jiu-jitsu?
Something like golf is,
really?
Oh my God, the coordination required to play golf is crazy. But don't turn golf into a freaking drinking day. Not because now you're messing it up. But if you go out with your friends and you're like, you're really focusing on that swing, there's so much attention to detail in golf that I think that I'll put that in a skill-based hobby for sure. So I'm going to drop the categories, but another skill-based hobby, guys that like to work on cars and like kind of soup up their cars and things like that. That's really, you got to learn about this stuff. These things actually build a part of you up, and they tend to touch in something that's natural for men. So I'm working on these categories, and I'm sure there's somebody out there that has discussed this in detail. So just bear with me because I'm just going off like gut feeling and kind of observational. So you can group men into certain categories, and ideally, the hobby that you pick will align or will foster, will kind of touch that and help you express that category. So we look out in nature and historically the roles that men have filled out in society. Now, a lot of those roles are either obsolete or not everybody has an opportunity to participate in them. I take back obsolete. They're not obsolete. We think they're obsolete, but they're not. So first role that comes to my mind as a military guy is a warrior, defender of the homeland. That is a role for that's mostly been fulfilled by men.
And I had this thought last night when we were talking about this. I think that our military has done such a good job at keeping separate what we're fighting against that a lot of them, like I would say I was completely naive to it before I met you. We don't understand what we're being protected against.
Because war has never come to this country. There has never been war on this soil in modern society. Besides the Civil War, modern combat has never been fought on this land, and that's a freaking privilege. Let's start with that. Because they're dudes that go abroad and stop and go fight before it hits here. Now, listen, we can. That's a deeper conversation.
Yeah,
when
sorry,
we
I
start
just
talking. No. But that's
some
a
people
good
will be
point.
like, warrior, what's the big deal? Why?
Good, exactly.
I'm like, well, you don't know what could be.
Our society is the American society is, for better or for worse, structured in a way where most of the population is sheltered from violence and from very dark things. Even though they are happening in our streets, the bad stuff that we see here is not as bad as the stuff that we see over there.
Yeah.
or it's very well hidden because you have warriors, law enforcement, you have firefighters, and then you have military guys that shelter the rest of the population from a lot of stuff. So guys are walking around thinking that being a warrior is obsolete, and you're fat and you're lazy and you're weak, and you don't realize how negative that is because you think there's no use for those traits. Okay, so definitely a warrior is a natural state of men that has always been historically, now you don't need, you're an accountant, you don't need to go fight a war, but you might need something that touches that and you don't even know it. Jiu-jitsu, that's where I put guys that are attracted to things like martial arts, guys that are attracted to things like shooting, like guns. Then they enjoy that. That's a skill-based hobby too, learning to shoot really well. You don't just pull up and start shooting. That's a skill-based hobby as well. Mm-hmm. So guys that are attracted to that sort of thing, that you're kind of sharpening the blade of a warrior. The other thing that leadership in some way, shape, or form. No, this doesn't mean that you have to be a high-level manager at a company. Like guys that I put in this category are coaches, guys that coach little league and, do that sort of thing on the spur side, or guys like me that, I coach, I'm a trainer, I'm a strength coach, guys that coach whatever. I put you in that category of leadership. You don't have to have a title to be a leader. Here's another one that's going to surprise people. Dad. Guys that dad hard. I'm talking hard. Like there's some people that you're around that you see them do the dad thing at a higher level. You're like, man, he's really in tune with that kid. He's paying attention to a lot of stuff. He does builds that kid up, talks to him a certain way. That's a leadership trait. And you're sharpening that leader blade, and it makes, it makes for you operating at a higher level.
And it doesn't have to be like loud and boisterous. Like nope. I think of your father. He's a great leader, and he's. I don't mean this in a bad way, but he's more quiet.
Yeah, my dad's very quiet, and he was a military officer as well. And it showed the way, the way that he raised me and stuff. It's a different thing. The other one that I put on there is a fixer.
That's my dad.
That's your dad. That's my father-in-law is, you can call him a contractor, construction guy, whatever, very blue collar. But the level at which he blue collars is I call it art, like he's so good with his hands. It's crazy. It's ridiculous. What can't Woody do?
Yeah. He recently retired, but his boss won't let him completely go because he basically works PRN now, where if there's anything that his former boss needs done that he wants done with precision and done delicately, he'll only ask my dad to do it.
Yeah, listen, he can electrician, plumbing, framing, whatever you want that requires hammer and tools and all that stuff, he can do it and do it really well.
So we live on a dirt road, and the county will come grade the road.
Would you say that you grew up chilling on a dirt road?
Stop it.
Okay.
So the county will come grade the dirt road, and my dad doesn't like it the way it's done by the county. And so he has a tractor, but he didn't have I think it's like a plow to grade the road, right? So grader is what I call it. So he just took scrap metal, welded it together, made a grader, and now he redoes the road after the county comes and does it.
That is a fixer if you've ever seen one. So obviously Woody was fortunate enough to live off of that, but this man has a shop in the house where he goes to every day and he just does stuff. He works with tools and does stuff with his hands for fun. And he does it for work and he does it for fun. Some people get a line like that.
Right.
But he's the type of guy that if he would have been, I don't know, a freaking finance guy, he would have had a shop in the house and he would have worked on stuff and fixed stuff on the weekends and that sort of thing. My grandfather was like that. My mom's dad, he was an engineer, but he would come home from work and he would work on stuff, a lot of tools, a lot of projects, a lot of painting. He would do a lot of blue collar stuff around the house, and it gave him peace. He was a very quiet man. So you got your fixers, guys that work on cars, that sort of thing. You're turning wrenches. Providers. This is where I put the hunters and the fishermen. Guys that like to hunt and fish and do that sort of thing, because you're bringing home the bacon, if you will. You're bringing food back to the table and that sort of thing. And then that hunting and fishing and that sort of thing, farming, guys that start, plots of land and plant crops or whatever, that's provider right there. That's a natural state of man. The other one, the strategist. Last night we were going back and forth on what to name this. It's guys that have more like intellectual pursuits.
Yeah.
You know, like building things, solving puzzles, managing lots of resources. These guys
More logical.
more day trading, like guys that really look at stocks and stuff and figuring out ways how to make money. Like that's another trait right there.
Right.
And listen, day trading is a hobby for some people, and they were figuring out ways how to side hustle. Oh, guys that do garage sales and be like, I'm going to buy baseball cards. Like, I'm going to buy this card and sell it for this much. That's a strategist, and they love that. You know, kind of have a lot
That's
of
your
that.
friend Rob with the watches.
Yes, exactly. Guys that do that those are strategists, and he's the money guy in our group. He's the guy that hey, I'm going to put some money over here. You know, that's him.
Yep.
He's always been like that. So yeah, that's a strategist. And then the last one that I got was the creatives. So these are like guys that paint, guys that build stuff like carpentry type of jobs or sculpting or that sort of thing. Guys that build businesses and just kind of figure out how to set up businesses to where they're more efficient. You're literally guys that create content, that sort of thing. It's a bunch of areas that if you pick a hobby that kind of has that, I don't know, writing poetry too, philosophers, that sort of thing.
Creative,
yeah. We all want to have a little bit of this as a dude, like as a person. You want to touch these areas in your life and figure out how to touch them. And what happens is that it helps you balance yourself out mentally. It puts you in a better state. Like it might relax you. Like, hey, I worked a long day, but when I get home, I'm going to, I don't know, screw the things in a chair or make this chair, or I'm going to go to jujitsu, or I'm going to go do this other thing that I'm going to write some poetry or whatever. And then what you feel, that helps with stress management. Yep. That helps with feelings of anxiety and depression because you're working on developing things.
Yep.
Does that make sense? Men need to feel purposeful and useful. Mm-hmm. And these things, like that's where the hobbies come in. If you're working a job that you don't really care about, this is where you balance yourself out a little bit more. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think to wrap it up with our little, like, it's fine section is what happens if men are devoid of those things, if they don't have those things. So men who don't, all they do is go to work and then come home, and then that seeps out as anger, sometimes
that's
very loudly
rage,
or sometimes very silently, which to me is the scarier one. So
this is why crime and things like that are mostly done by men. When you're not in tune, it expresses itself usually as anger. Even if you're feeling depressed and anxious, eventually it really comes out as you lash out. Mm-hmm. It tends to happen a lot. And that silent rage component, like there's a lot of men out there that are not doing any of these things. They're not taking care of themselves physically. They're not eating the right stuff. And they definitely don't have any hobbies or things that build them up. And they're not working on their social connections. You know, they might have a couple of drinking buddies, but they're acquaintance level drinking buddies. They're not ride or die solid friendships that they work on and foster throughout the years. They have the silent rage where they seem like they're fine. They seem, oh, it's fine. I'm good until you're not.
Yeah.
You know, men will hit the self-destruct button quicker. That's why, most suicides are men as well. So when you look at the grand scheme of things, guys, you need to think about what you're doing for movement. You need to think about what you're doing for nutrition. Then you need to figure out your emotional health and your connections with other people to really maximize your health long term. Health, it just goes beyond what you can see and touch and look in a certain way. There's a lot of stuff that affects your health. And that social connection part specifically, man, we underestimate that a lot.
I agree.
For people in general, but man, for men, it really underestimate that.
Yeah.
Anyway, anything you want to add?
No, that was great. You kind of took the reins on that, but you were on a roll, so I let you, babe.
Yeah. Oh, well, I mean, this is the wave tops. Like we'll definitely deep dive more into this as we go. But starting out, I think we want to plant the seed in people's heads on things that are ailing us, and then we'll start going into things that are working against us. And then we can start going into things. How do we fight this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And I think hopefully that this episode, so if you are a man out there and you're feeling like, something is missing and I don't have a purpose, hopefully this sheds some light on
where to start looking. Yeah. You know what? And if you really need help with this, definitely reach out to us.
And I think that it's worth mentioning too, real quick, when you were talking about the emotional intelligence is, you aren't just talking on it. You walked the walk with that because you did do an emotional intelligence seminar, conference. I can't remember exactly.
It was therapy. It was group therapy.
Yeah,
for sure.
It was huge. It was in a little bit different of a setting, but it was probably one of the big reasons why we're together.
It no doubt changed the course of my life because if I would have stayed where I was at before I went to that, I wouldn't be able to have this relationship that we have.
Right.
And, the way I see my friends, even though I've loved them for years, that might be different too. Definitely the way that I coach and train people now and that ability to connect with people's problems and help them solve it, it would be completely different. So I wouldn't have the business that I have either. It changed the course of my life.
Right. So if you feel like you're like, I don't even know what emotional intelligence is or how do I improve it? There's a bunch of ways to do it. So reach out to us if you're just, wanting to know more about that.
Yeah, for sure. So hopefully this created some awareness for you guys, little things that you want to start thinking about. Remember, it's always a sliding scale. You might be at 0 today, but how do we get you to 5 and then to 10 and then to 20 and then to 100 eventually? Daunting, a lot of stuff working against our health that's within our control and stuff that isn't, but we need to be crazy enough to keep working on it and fighting the good fight for your health.
Yeah.
With that in mind, I guess we out.
Yeah. Thanks for listening.
Yep. Thanks for listening to the Pharmaphobic Podcast. If you found this conversation interesting, which I know you did, make sure to follow us on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And also make sure to check us out on Instagram @Achieve the Lifestyle. And if you're interested in pursuing a stronger, healthier, more capable version of yourself, check out our website @AchieveTheLifestyle.com.
The Pharmaphobic Podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. The views expressed are those of the hosts and guests and do not constitute medical, legal, or professional advice. Always consult a qualified healthcare provider before making any medical or wellness decisions. While we discuss pharmaceutical, holistic, and alternative health topics, our content is not a substitute for professional medical guidance.